Hey everybody, it's your Human Anatomy and Physiology teacher, Mr. Poser. This is the beginning of our very first unit in Human Anatomy and Physiology, which is on a biology review. So this will be the first of a series of recorded lectures that I will be uploading from time to time on everything Human Anatomy and Physiology. So we're going to be going through the whole year through these recorded videos here. We're going to be doing obviously a lot of stuff in class if you elect to learn in class, but if not, then this is how we're going to be doing this whole thing. So where we're going to start is, yes, in biology. Before we get into the rest of the human anatomy and physiology. So this is my 4th year teaching class, and I found that every year it would be helpful to start with a basic rundown of biology before we get into all the other fun stuff like the organ systems and whatnot. So this is where we're going to begin. And today, so we're going to have 4 different lessons here on biology review, and where we're going to begin today is talking about the biological macromolecules, or the molecules of life, and a little bit of chemistry, and a little bit of talking about what the food that you put in your body. While that's not really an introductory topic, it is important for knowing what your cells are made up of, and the fact that you are made up of cells. And how they function. So let's get into it. First of all, since we are living things, humans are living things, we are what are called organic. We are made of organic compounds, and organic doesn't mean like, oh, I bought it at Whole Foods. No, it means that you're made up of carbon, at least a carbon and a hydrogen atom. So organic compounds make up living things. In fact, there's a whole field of chemistry that's called organic chemistry. If you decide to pursue a degree in biology or any other medical related field, which is hopefully why you're taking this class, you will have to take a class or 2 on organic chemistry. And that is chemistry solely focused on molecules that you're going to be able to find in living things, or just molecules that contain carbon and hydrogen. All right. As opposed to organic compounds, there are inorganic compounds. It's the opposite, and those are composed of other elements without carbon, like say salts, metals. Carbon dioxide is even considered a inorganic compound, even though it has carbon in it. And water is technically inorganic too. So most of you is made up of water, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but the rest of our molecules are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids, which we'll talk about in a minute, are all what we call organic compounds, and those are our molecules of life. And the way that you're able to function as a living thing is because of these molecules. But let's talk about water first. This is a very, very important molecule. Water, while it's technically inorganic, is essential for normal cell function. Your cells are almost all water. 2/3 of your body mass is made up of water. Most of your organs are water, maybe besides bones, which are 22%, but still it's a lot of water. Okay, so even though it's an inorganic molecule, you need your water, so stay hydrated, everybody. Water has got some unique properties that allow it to be very, very, very good for living things and make it like one of the central compounds for life on Earth. And guess what? You as a human are life on Earth. So let's continue here. But the atom that makes up organic compounds, and the whole field of organic chemistry is focused on, is carbon. And carbon is referred to as the building block of life. And why is it the building block of life? Well, we'll get to that in a second. But as I said here, the second point, living matter that is not water is what we call organic. So all the other molecules that we're going to talk about in the wide variety, the ridiculous variety of molecules that help make you up are largely composed of carbon. Okay, so you are organic. And the reason why carbon is such a great building block is because it can form 4 covalent bonds at the same time. It can form 2 double bonds, it can form a double bond and 2 single bonds, or it can form 4 single bonds. So imagine carbon being like the perfect, I don't know, have you ever played with Kinects before? Okay, you can attach 4 different things to it. That's like carbon. Okay, it can form 4 different bonds, and as a result, it makes up this great building block for building these really, really complex molecules that help make up you. Okay, so this molecule right here that I'm outlining here is called methane, and methane is technically an organic molecule. It's actually what comes out when you pass gas, one of the gases that comes out. It's a greenhouse gas too. But what I'm showing you here is that this carbon atom right here can form 4 other bonds with 4 other molecules. Okay, so this carbon right here can form 4 bonds, and this could be another carbon over here. This could be another carbon. That could be another carbon. That could be another carbon. And that way you can get these ginormous molecules. Okay, molecules are still pretty small, but like things like proteins and polysaccharides, those are going to be really, really big molecules. And without carbon, that can't really happen. All right, so carbon is our main molecule of life. How do you get carbon? Well, carbon needs to be, you need a new influx of carbon all the time. You need to be getting rid of a lot of carbon a lot. So that happens through, well, eating, right? So taking in your food that came from other living things or that is made from something that came from a living thing, that's how we get our carbon. We are what are called heterotrophs. We have to get our energy and we have to get our atoms that help make us up from eating living things, or yeah, eating other living things. Okay, so unless you eat like metal or like light bulbs or something like that, I don't know, I saw a guy on TV once eating light bulbs, then you are getting your carbon from living things. Okay, so we're heterotrophs, we got to eat other things. We're not plants, we can't just photosynthesize and, you know, take carbon dioxide from the air. That'd be really cool, but we can't do that. So we have to eat food. All right, and speaking of food, let's talk about things that you are going to find on like a nutrition label regarding food. I don't really know where to put my face right now. Let's go right here for right now. Okay, you get it. It's like bread and stuff, right? All right, so we're going to talk about 4 different molecules of life, and we also call them biological macromolecules. Macro is the opposite of micro. Micro means really small, but macro means big. Okay, so these tend to be big molecules that are really essential for making up cells and thus making up you. So we're going to talk about 4 of them. The first one you see it on a nutrition label. They're called carbohydrates. Ew, carbs! I want to get swole. I can't eat carbs. I'm on a low carb diet. That philosophy is very misguided, and I'll rant about that on another time. But here's the thing: carbs are a source of energy for you, and it's found in most foods. Okay, carbohydrates are your body's #1 go-to source of energy, and in fact, many of your organ systems, including your nervous system, depend on having an intake of an intake of carbohydrates. Okay, that includes your brain. Okay, so if you're one of these people that are not like, you know, they're not eating any carbs, whatever, then, dude, your brain's not functioning the right way. It's really not. Okay, maybe that's a stretch, but your brain depends on it, okay? Carbohydrates, they're made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms. The smaller versions of these carbohydrates that link together and form big molecules, those are called monosaccharides, mono meaning 1. And you can get carbohydrates from fruits, veggies, and grains, like the stuff that I put my face over right here. So in your notebook or wherever you're watching this on, I would like you to take a moment here and draw a carbohydrate with me. Okay, so a monosaccharide, a carbohydrate kind of looks like a hexagon right there. Okay, so one monosaccharide, like the most famous one, is called glucose, right? You have to monitor your blood glucose if you're diabetic. It has a carbon ring. It's a ring of 6 carbons like that. So if we were to link a bunch of these together, we would get something called a polysaccharide. All right, but this is what we call a monosaccharide, mono meaning 1. But this stuff over here is what I'm really going to be asking you to know for the sake of our biology review. All right, so I put my face over the picture again. We're going to be moving on to proteins. Proteins, muscle, right? You get proteins if you want to get swole. Okay, yeah, that's partially true. But proteins are really what they really do everything for your cells. They're super important, and the variety of proteins that you have and the jobs that they do, it's incredible. It's like ridiculously wide range of functions that proteins have, and I'll show you that another slide here in just a minute. But yeah, as I said, so proteins, this is our second type of biological macromolecule. They serve many functions, okay? And they're made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, and meaning nitrogen atoms. So if I want to make a protein here, if I'm building a protein, what you have to build a protein, or what a cell has to build a protein from, is compounds called amino acids. So amino acids are smaller molecules that if you link a bunch of them together in a chain and then you fold up that chain into some crazy shape, that is what makes up proteins. Okay, and you can get proteins from meats, fish, nuts, and legumes. You know, unless you're somebody like me and you're a vegetarian, then you don't eat the meats and the fish, and you focus on protein, getting getting it from your nuts and legumes. But anyway, let's draw a protein here. I'm going to take my pen again. Ooh, that's really rough. I should use a mouse or something. Here we go. Why don't I use my mouse? Okay, so if I am drawing a protein, wow, that is really rough. What a protein is generally going to look like, okay, or at least what's called the primary level of protein. Okay, if each of these little circles or closest circles that I drew here, those are called amino acids, and a protein is a chain of those amino acids. Okay, and when you have lots of different amino acids linked together, what your cells do is they fold them together and make proteins. And proteins do a lot of stuff. Speaking of which, here's the page that I was talking about regarding the functions of proteins. So check it out. Okay, here's your muscles, actin and myosin. Those are proteins that allow your muscles to contract and, able to move you and pick up things and get swole. Receptors, the proteins allow your cells to communicate with each other. They store things like iron. They're enzymes. So your entire digestive system and the fact that you're able to convert food that you take into your body and make it into things that your body can use, it runs on enzymes, and enzymes are proteins. Antibodies are proteins. Antibodies have been in the news, right? So if you've had COVID before, then your body has built COVID antibodies that can fight it off in case it finds COVID in the bloodstream again. Okay, so antibodies, it's part of your immune system. Those are proteins as well. All right, so proteins have a ridiculously wide range of functions. And really, it's what your cells operate with. Okay, third biological macromolecule are called lipids, and lipids are really, really good for long-term energy storage, and they help make up cell membranes. Okay, lipids are commonly referred to as fats. Ew, fats! I don't want fats. Well, guess what? You need fats too. They're also very essential for normal functioning. Okay, because your cell membranes, what keep things in and out of a cell, are also made of lipids, and that is 100% essential. Okay, so by the way, if anybody's ever told you that, oh, I'm 0% body fat, they're a liar. Okay, everybody needs fat. Everybody needs lipids. Anyway, I digress. Lipids. This is our third type of biological macromolecule. They're made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms. And a smaller molecule that when they come together, they form a larger lipid. Those are called fatty acids. You might have heard of these before, like omega-3, omega-6. Yeah, those are fatty acids, and you can get them from foods like this, like fish, oils, nuts, like avocados, right? So those are called fatty acids, and where you can find lipids are in fats and oils. So what we're going to draw here is actually a compound called a triglyceride, and it's it's the molecule that your body turns lipids into, or turns fatty acids into, so it can be transported throughout your body through your bloodstream. Okay, so when your doctor's measuring how much fat you have in your blood, they're measuring what's called triglycerides. But anyway, a triglyceride looks like this. It's got a backbone molecule like this. It's called glycerol. You don't need to know that, but I'm telling you anyway. Okay, and then it's got 3 little squiggles there. So it kind of looks like a squiggly E. And each of these squiggles is a fatty acid. So multiple fatty acids can come together and they can form these triglyceride molecules. And you have multiple kinds of fatty acids. You have saturated and unsaturated. And we'll talk about why that's important later on in this year when we talk about the digestive system. Okay. All right, let's keep going. And our last biological macromolecule that we're going to discuss is called nucleic acids. I have nowhere to put my face now. Let's go up here. So nucleic acids, and these are your DNA and your RNA. So these are what your cells have in order to, pass on your genetic information. And why is your genetic information important? Well, it's your cell's instructions for building proteins. And remember how proteins do everything? So your nucleic acids are able to tell your cells to build the right proteins in the right place at the right time to do the right job. So they're really the basis of how life works. And every living thing, whether it's a virus or a human being, they all have nucleic acids one way or another. Nucleic acids are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. And by the way, you don't see nucleic acids on a nutrition label, but you might see proteins and fats and carbohydrates, right? Well, that's because every living thing has nucleic acids. right? So no matter what you eat, you're taking in nucleic acids, whether you like it or not. Again, unless you're eating light bulbs or metal or something like that. Okay, so nucleic acids are really, really, really long chains of little molecules called nucleotides. And if you remember from previous bio class, nucleotides are those letters A, T, C, and G in DNA, and then U in RNA, right? So those make up the code. Your genetic code is made up of those 4 letters, and those 4 letters, a combination of those, allows your body to make proteins. Okay, our 2 main examples of nucleic acids are DNA and RNA. The NA in each of those stands for nucleic acid, right? So let's draw these. Okay, so DNA, let's use my mouse again because that was rough last time. Okay, so here's DNA. It has got a double helix shape, okay, and it's got 2 strands of these nucleotides. Oh man, this is rough. Okay, hopefully you can do this better than me. Yup. Okay, there we go. So that's DNA right there. So it has 2 strands of nucleotides, and RNA has only 1 strand of nucleotides, right? So it's got nucleotides kind of coming off like this, okay, and it's got 1 strand. All right, and your body needs both of these, okay? So anything that you eat, what your body's going to do is take it apart and break it down into the little nucleotides so that it can build new cells with those nucleotides or with those compounds. All right, last page I'm going to show you here is a better picture of DNA and RNA. Again, I'm showing you here that DNA has 2 strands and it's got these 4 different bases, and RNA has 1 strand. Okay, so those are our biomolecules. Those are our molecules of life. We talked about water. We talked about the importance of carbon. We went over a lot in this video. So if you can, then you can go back and review it if you need to, or let me know if you have any questions, and we will see you next time, everybody.